right now, there are more people dying from cold homes rather than warm homes. But as temperatures rise and we get more extreme weather events, that balance will probably shift.
Good morning. Today could be the hottest day of the year so far, but there's a split over whether you're set for a scorcher or for storms. Temperatures are expected to get up to 34 degrees in the southeast, where we are awful, with a yellow heat health alert in place. Meanwhile, there's a chance of power cuts due to thunderstorms and heavy rain in parts of the north and across Scotland, you lucky devils. Weather presenter and host of the Square Raindrop podcast, Joe Wheeler, is here. Morning, Joe.
Good morning to you. Yes, it's a very, very exciting day for weather today. In fact, it was a bit of a toss-up because last night, or overnight, I should say, there was a very good chance of seeing the Perseid meteor shower and also a chance of seeing the Northern Lights as well. So it was a question of either staying up for that or being up nice and early to look at the weather this morning. And I have to say, it is already looking quite dramatic. Parts of Wales saw temperatures holding up overnight at 23 to 25 Celsius.
Oof.
So that's a tropical night. Anything above 20 Celsius is a tropical night. But then again, fortunes are changing. Already there is some torrential rain out towards the west. Parts of Northern Ireland, southwestern Scotland, seeing some really big thunderstorms this morning. Those are stretching their way down towards the northwest of England as well. And in fact, the rain itself is already knocking on the door of Western London. So, the rain is not that far away. And it's behind that we're going to see some fresher conditions. But in the meantime, all the warm air is being pushed up into a very small zone, really, from kind of eastern parts of Yorkshire down to Lincolnshire, which is where I am this morning, parts of East Anglia and down to the eastern side of London. And that's where we're likely to see temperatures, not only 34 degrees Celsius, but a potential 35. That would be 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So watching that one with great interest today.
And the good thing about this, I mean, if you like hot weather, maybe this isn't a good thing. This is one of those rare things where you can kind of be quite confident. This is almost a day's event, isn't it? This is going to take place today and then things are going to change again tomorrow.
Oh, yes, not so much a hot wave, more of a hot flush. So, yes, it's going to blink and it's gone, which is probably the best thing for it, because with this heat, we've also got incredible humidity. A lot of this heat originated. It's all to do with Hurricane Debbie that was over the States and then travelled up the Canadian eastern seaboard out into the Atlantic, and the power, the energy in this storm kind of buckled the jet stream, and that made it kind of go to the north, and then it kind of curled round and came up. And in fact, the warm air associated with this storm sank over France, reheated, backtracked, and then started working its way into southern parts of the country. But it will disappear, as you say, as quickly as it arrived, because the heat we've got isn't as a result of high pressure, which is what I'd call a nice summer's day. When you get a few settled days weather, this is just extremely hot, extremely humid, and thankfully we'll go out with a bang, and hopefully we'll see some fresher weather for the rest of the week.
A yellow alert has been issued for parts of England by the UK Health Security Agency, and that means particularly vulnerable people, perhaps the elderly, and those with multiple health conditions are likely to struggle to cope with the heat. It comes as new research from the Warm This Winter campaign suggests that 4.5 million people have been so hot in their own homes, it's made them ill in the last year. So with the new government obviously looking to kickstart something of a house building boom, what should we all be doing to ensure that new homes are better suited to our changing climate? Cara Jenkinson is Cities Manager for climate solutions charity Ashden. Hello, Cara, how are you?
Hi there, hi.
Tell us a little bit about this then, the idea that new homes need to be better suited to our changing climate. This, I guess, depends on how certain we can be about what our changing climate is going to look like. What do you understand it to be looking like as we view it from the perspective of 2024?
Yes, well, I think we're fairly sure that there are going to be more extreme weather events happening over the next few years, and that's both flooding, increased risk of flooding, and also increased risk of heat waves such as we're having right now. That's increasing steadily.
Okay, so heat waves, I mean, yes, it's hot in the south of England today, and it perhaps will be tomorrow, and it was relatively hot yesterday. It's not, unless you are very vulnerable, it's not appalling, is it?
I think it depends what sort of home you live in. I think over the last 10 years, we've had 500,000 homes being built that are people are already at risk of really suffering from overheating. So if you're in a small flat in a city centre with lots of big glass windows,
Yeah.
you're going to be feeling very hot right now.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I absolutely take your point. I mean, why isn't that thought through then when the plans for the block of flats, for example, are drawn up?
Yes, it's a very good question because we've kind of known how to do this for at least the last 10 to 15 years. And there are some great examples of social housing developments, such as in Norwich and Exeter, that are doing this just right. But we've only recently had a change in the rules to say that developers must consider this. So that came in last year. And so we can expect that developers now will be building properties that are more suited to deal with the extreme heat.
And what will that mean? Will they be more expensive? Will they be smaller, bigger? Will they have fewer windows? What?
They will probably have smaller windows and they will have windows with external shading. So they'll probably look a bit more like homes on the continent, where we'd see shutters outside to protect against the heat. We'd also expect to see them with windows not just on one wall, because the problem with when you have windows just on one wall, you can't open it and get airflow coming through. It's
Right.
called cross ventilation. And if you don't have that, then you're just not going to be able to cool the property. So we'd expect to see homes that have windows on multiple sides of the building. So yeah, that's what we'd expect to see.
The people suffering right now in the extreme heat, they won't necessarily be in newish flats, will they? I mean, some of them will be living in, I don't know, in basements or in relatively small terraced houses that were built over a century ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in terms of people with vulnerabilities, actually the private rented sector is probably the worst. And there's not much enforcement of standards there. And if you're living, as you say, in a basement, with really poor ventilation, damp, etc., then absolutely there are real issues there, and that is more expensive to rectify. I think it's very important when the government brings in the new energy efficiency standards for private rented sector homes that they don't just look at the dangers from being too cold, but they also look at the risks from being too hot as well.
Right. I mean, which of the two would you rather be? And I don't mean that in a fatuous way, but is it better for your health to be too hot every now and again or too cold through the winter, which we do hear about more often?
Well, both are bad for health for different reasons, for different illnesses. Probably right now there are more people dying from cold homes rather than warm homes. But as temperatures rise and we get more extreme weather events, that balance will probably shift. So we really need to be looking at both aspects.
Can I just, in the private rented sector, if you are just stifling in your flat or house right now, is it the duty of your landlord to do something about it? Are they supposed to turn up with a fan for you?
Not right now. I think really the focus on health hazards has been around cold homes rather than warm homes. So they aren't necessarily obliged to do that right now, but it's an area that needs increasing focus.
And to the idea of the house building boom that Labour are keen to kickstart, for any number of good reasons, by the way, we should say, if we do take proper account of our changing climate, will that be harder, and will the homes necessarily be more expensive?
I think that potentially they will be more expensive in terms of having to put additional measures in, like shading solutions. However, in the long run, they'll actually be cheaper to run because we won't have to put in things like air conditioning, which could end up being really expensive for the occupant to run. So yes, there'll be some investment needed up front, and part of that investment will be in the training of our construction workers, who, to date haven't needed to know much about the kind of the building physics, how heat moves through a building, how moisture moves through a building. That's just not been part of construction training, and we need to get that in right now. So yes, there will be some short-term cost, but there will be long-term savings in terms of bills down the line.
Just very briefly, what is your take on air conditioning? If you are fortunate enough to be considering installing it in your home in the UK, should you?
I think the issue there is cost for the person running it. Also, it will increase electricity demand, so we might need more pylons and more energy generating
So you're
infrastructure.
contributing to the problem, aren't you?
You are contributing to the problem. So it's always best to look at what they call passive cooling measures. So whether it's a fan on the ceiling or just the way you build a property or the shading I mentioned before, that's a much more kind of climate friendly way of dealing with overheating.
Thank you very much for your time. Cara Jenkinson, Cities Manager for the charity Ashden, which looks at climate solutions.